Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so excited to be talking to Chris Perfetti, who plays the wonderful character Jacob in Abbott Elementary. And one of the things that I love in this portrayal and just the way that you get to play this character over the course of so many seasons is at this point you have such a great idea of who he is, and yet the writing still continues to introduce all these new little details. And I was interested in just what that looks like 4 seasons in and having a character with a foundation, but still getting to find ways in which he grows for you.
Yeah, I'll say it's certainly not something that I ever expected, to be with a character this long. And to walk into a collaboration where there's a whole room of experts on the character, who know just as much about him, who are just as obsessed with his desires and dreams and fears and fantasies as I am. You know, we joke now that it feels like we're about to start our fifth season, and they have stolen, so by they I mean the gorgeous writers room, which is led obviously by the brilliant Quinta Brunson. The line between Jacob and Chris is sort of ever blurring, and it's always so fun in the table reads to see things that I have let slip about my own life show up in that week's episode. Um, but yeah, we on the whole, I will say the secret to it is just the team that Quinta has put together. She has found, such gifted writers who are, trying to thwart at every turn a show that would feel repetitive or that wouldn't dig deep into who these people are. And yeah, that is the sustainability of it for me as an actor, is I feel like I'm learning about him in real time with the world. And so it's been a joy.
I'm also really curious if the scope of some of the comedy in playing Jacob has changed a little bit over time, because as he's become more ingratiated with the group and the relationships have become much closer, it kind of feels like the comedy is much more on the same level, and like the jabs and the jokes that they make at him are a little bit different, and he's also much more self-aware at this point. And I was really curious how that's changed some of the comedic beats and the comedic timing of those moments for you.
Yeah, I think, this year, not to get too woo-woo, but like, you know, Quinta has a real knack for knowing and embracing the flow of humanity, of comedy, of a long-running show. And so I think she knew early that, like, if we were going to get some more mileage out of Jacob, like that joke of him not really being in on the joke was only something we could milk so far. And it was a beautiful thing to have that sort of come to Jesus moment. There was comedy even in that. And I'm glad we sort of moved past that, early on in the show, because we got to just see what the other side of the coin is. And um, you know, we got to see Jacob win a little bit. We got to see him sort of make fun of himself. And um, yeah, I think we have always been, and I'm very grateful to our producers and to the other people that I'm acting alongside on the show, have been extremely interested in, at in any way that we can, duping people into believing that this is really happening somewhere. That's the beauty of the mockumentary format, is that, if we're doing our job right, it should sort of feel like there's actual cameras actually capturing something. And if you write, two-dimensional characters, or if you make the same joke over and over again, you kind of lose the trust of your audience. And Randall Einhorn, who is such a brilliant creator and sort of championed this style of filmmaking and directs, more than half of our episodes, um, has been relentless in just sort of like pushing how much we can get these sneak peeks into human life and the minutia of um, you know private versus public. And so I think that was a very long-winded way of saying, like, I'm so glad that we are trying to push the envelope and we're trying to reveal the layers of these characters. And yeah, there's only so much that we can do in a 22-minute sitcom as it is. And so you better believe if Quinta Brunson is in charge, she's gonna try and flip that on its head a little bit. So I've been very grateful for that.
It also feels like some of what you're describing about making sure that it never stays one note in the writing, doing that plays into Jacob's dynamic with Melissa and with Barbara, because very much they were kind of able to keep him on the outs a little bit more, but now he's ingratiated himself into them more. You know, they've become these confidants and these mentors and these friends to him. And he kind of tries to stand his ground a little bit more, even whether when he's not completely successful in it. And how do you feel like there's been a real evolution on that side of things?
Yeah, I feel like, as much as I was just saying I'm so grateful to have been able to show these other sides of this character, we also would be dumb to throw out what really works. And so Jacob is not overnight gonna stop, overextending himself or putting his foot in his mouth or, um being sort of like a social puppy dog. And it's fun to see that sort of fall on its face, especially with Melissa and Barbara. But yeah, I think certainly now in the fourth season, we're trying to tell the story that they have more in common than that they don't. And so they've all sort of banded together for whatever it's worth to make it through that school year. Um, and and yeah, I think, when you draw seven very different characters, any sort of combination of them, there's infinite colors to play. There's, seeing those two people mad at each other. There's seeing those two people, team up and conquer the world together. And um, uh, again, I feel like I'm saying this, over and over again. I'm so grateful that the vision was so specific for Quinta because, we still haven't even done all of the combinations, but really people have asked me before, what was it like when you found out that Jacob and Melissa would be moving in together, or rather that Jacob would be moving in with Melissa? And I was like, I love Lisa Ann so much. I love all of my cast so much, but um, I think she's just a phenomenal actress. And I was so excited. I thought there was so much to mine out of that relationship, but I always kept coming back to this idea that, you know, Quinta really set us up for success by knowing who these people are. And so you could make any of them roommates, and there would be um, pathos and comedy about any of those things. But um, yeah, I will say, like, just on a personal note, like being on the same team as Barbara and Melissa is just great for my soul.
And you also brought up the obvious documentary format. And I love how every single character has a slightly different relationship with the camera crew. And again, it hasn't always stayed exactly the same the whole time. And for Jacob, it very much feels like his personality, you mentioned he's very much kind of like the golden retriever, the puppy dog, that he's friends with them and he wants to be friends with them and he wants them to like him. And there's almost like these little looks for like, you're approving what I'm doing, right? That he gives them even when he's not talking to camera. And how do you feel that that's really grown for him over the last few seasons?
Yeah, that was always a way in for me. I think it's fun for me if Jacob thinks that the documentary is about him. If he thinks that he will be an executive producer in 10 years' time when they finally cut it together. I've been trying to pitch this idea to Quinta that like Jacob should um take hold of the cameras for one episode and how fun it would be to see um what Jacob sees in a day at Abbott. Um, yeah, it's this completely amazing and unexpected gift, this other character of the people that you don't see. And now in our fifth season, um, it's just a spectacular creative collaboration. The people um, who capture what we're doing, know what we're going to do before we even do it. There's kind of like this symbiosis that's going on, and um, none of those looks to camera are scripted, and yet they're all captured, and it's because they know us so well, and there's such a choreography that now just feels so effortless. That's so fun to behold. Um, yeah.
I love all of that. It also feels like one of the gifts that Quinta and the writers created for Jacob this season was the episode where his brother comes along, because there's been little iterations and little details of, he left home and he really hasn't been back in a long time and he doesn't have a close relationship to his family. And it was kind of beautiful to see the arc of what he thought his relationship with his brother was and finding out it was something completely different. And how do you feel that that set up some of the arc of change and growth in him throughout the rest of the entire season?
Yeah, look, if you want to push these characters along, like meet the crazy people that they come from. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. I think as I said before, like if this thing is going to continue to reveal itself and sustain itself, you have to be invested in these people. And one surefire way to do that is to find out why they are the way they are. And so I was so pleased, I feel like we had been sort of dropping hints about what that could have been from the jump, but um, uh, it was so much fun. And Tyler, who played my brother, I just thought seamlessly fit in the Abbott world, cre creatively and just like Quinta has really um, instilled this sense of collaboration on set that truly anything can happen. And I thought he was so down to play and to take a joke as far as, we wanted to take it. Um, and so that was just so much fun. I feel so lucky that I get to play with my regular guys every day because I feel like we're all sort of speaking the same language. We're all trying to make each other laugh. We're all trying to, see what we can get away with. And we're like a band now. We all know who plays what. And and it felt like that from the beginning, but now it just feels like we've been playing together. I read the other day that we've done 71 episodes, and I'm like, my mind is blown by that. Um, all of that is to say, Quinta has found people who um, just just slip into the ethos of the show and the vibe on set so well. And a lot of people want to be on our show right now. And I'm so glad that she is kind of like, if a recognizable person is on Abbott Elementary, it's because they're playing themselves, like Bradley Cooper stumbled into the school because he was in Philly. And I love that she has just sort of found these absolutely genius people who are maybe not yet household names, but get to yeah, just work so well. Um,
Definitely.
yeah,
Also, with meeting his brother in the show, did that also solidify to you a lot more in his relationships with the other teachers at the school and just the importance for him in really feeling like this is his found and created family?
totally. I mean, I think that has been, there's an early episode where Jacob is like kind of weirded out by how much Janine wants to be friends, and it feels like a very clear distinction. Like no, we're work friends, which is fine. It's just a different thing. Um, and certainly his obsession with like the Janine and Gregory relationship and like wanting to impress Barbara and living with Melissa and, feeling like he can simultaneously take on and cower under a table around Ava. Like, I think this group of people has always been incredibly important to Jacob. But yeah, when you throw something like that in the mix, that's so painful and so intense for a person, it was just a very easy kind of like um, transition to fall into the arms of the people who are most important to him, which is the people he works with.
There was also something really lovely about the fact that Gregory was the one to show him how his brother really felt about him by playing that podcast recording to him and being like, it's completely different to what you've been thinking this whole time. Because it felt like the two of them got much closer during the time that Janine was gone at the district. It kind of brought that friendship closer together. And I've heard you say that oftentimes you felt like Jacob would describe him as his best friend, but it wouldn't necessarily be the other way around. So do you feel like that really cemented something important for him in that moment?
I don't know. I can't speak for I can't speak for, Tyler would have to weigh in on that. But yeah, that has been speaking of the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, we started this idea in the second season and it was the first time that these scenes between Jacob and Gregory, these like longer kind of two-person scenes. It was something new, obviously, for the characters and for Tyler and I, and for the show. The show kind of operates at the speed of fun, and there are these moments where it settles for a bit, or there's something heartfelt happens, but for the most part it's chaos, and there's as many people as possible in a scene. And when we started to do these sort of longer moments where the show got to breathe between Tyler and I, yeah, I wasn't expecting how gratifying that would be. First and foremost, Tyler is such an extraordinary person, and he's an actor that really grounds me. And I think Quinta cast us appropriately in that sense. And I'm so glad that we continued to develop that. Um, yeah, and I hope it never ends. It has been fun to watch them sort of take care of each other in different moments.
Yeah, definitely. I've also heard you describing how you've often felt like Jacob is a character who oftentimes is there to create or heighten the conflict. And it's something that he's never intentionally doing. It's just like sometimes a misstep, a mistake, or something that he says. And so I wanted to ask about just essentially finding some of the comedy in how he accidentally does that sometimes.
Look, they have, like I said, at this point we all feel so comfortable with each other, and I can only speak for myself, but I genuinely love the people that I am working with. As people, as artists, I'm inspired by who they are. And when you have that comfortability, when you can relax, any actor will tell you it just blows the floodgates open for the kind of work that you can do. And so, yeah, we've got that going on, and we are really trying to it's a blast every day, and we're trying to make each other laugh. And so I think I have I went to a drama school that focused very heavily on uh training the body, and so physical comedy is always something that um it's been my way in for a lot of things. And I think they know that if they block the scene with me next to the garbage can, that I'm going to jump in the garbage can. Or if they put me in front of the door and somebody who I hate walks out the door, I'm going to slam the door behind them. And all of that again is an effort to sort of like do this beautiful thing that happens every day on set, which is the alchemy of like, what is this scene? So many jokes and so many ideas are left on the cutting room floor or on the set, and we are in that moment because we make the show so fast and furiously, trying to figure out what the funniest, best, most authentic version of it is. And so I think we all feel permission to do that, and I maybe feel too much permission to do that, but um yeah, I had a great acting teacher who told me that, like, um, if you're not trying to tickle yourself, if you're not trying to have fun, um, then you're gonna be in your head. And it's a play, like we do plays. This is a play that is filmed every day, but it's fun. And certainly, the being surrounded by children and their proximity to play and fun is just, infinitely different than that of an adult. It's this beautiful reminder that if you tell one of our young actors to make believe that their chicken nuggets are frozen, it's like the distance that they have to travel is it's almost instantaneous. It's this beautiful reminder of what we're all doing there. And so I would say that helps. Um, and and to completely contradict that, our scripts come so well baked to us. Again, I cannot emphasize enough how everybody thinks they have the greatest writers, their writers room is the best, but truly the writers on Abbott Elementary are fantastic. They've reinvented the show so many times and they have um such a specific and universal uh and twisted take on life. And so for the most part, we don't have to do very much because it's already works in my mind, but damn if we're not going to try, you know?
I love that description of everything. I also wanted to ask you about the karaoke episode because that was one of my favorite episodes of the season. And a large part of that was Jacob's karaoke performance of Papa Roach Last Resort. And I was curious if that was always the song choice from the very beginning in the scripts or if there were different ideas thrown around. And also just the fun of what you were describing about the playful element of getting to do something like that, but in character and also where he is in his headspace at that point in the evening.
Oh yeah, that episode was just a gift, as an actor. When the stakes are through the roof and the obstacles are aplenty, it's just like it just sort of takes care of itself. I think Quentin maybe asked early on, like if there was a song I did want to sing, and I don't know that I suggested anything, but um, yeah, I just thought that was such a good idea. And anytime we get to leave the school, I feel similarly to when we meet people's family members, we get to just reveal sides of these people that we haven't seen before. And um, it's almost like bonus time. It's like it's so strange. You remember like seeing your teachers outside of school. It feels like all bets are off and anything truly can happen. I love also when we get to, really mix up the visual language of the show. There's really only so much you can do when, the majority of the show takes place in the school. And so, yeah, those opportunities where we get to leave feel very exciting and dangerous and revelatory. It was a lot of fun, that episode.
There's also the moment in that karaoke episode as well where he's run into his ex and he's kind of gone through the panic where you had the great physical comedy of running into the room with all the bachelorette parties thinking that he's the stripper for the night. But then he
Yes.
kind of starts to contemplate everything. And it's not that he's sad about the breakup, but it's actually that he's feeling like his life is really stuck and really stilted. And for you, what was the importance of that moment with the fact that it's Barbara and Melissa are the two ones to come and check on him and to be the ones giving him advice at that point?
Yeah, again, this is what I mean about like I think the writers honestly know these characters in a way better than we do. I don't think that conversation would have happened that way with Janine or with Gregory, um, or with Mr. Johnson. Those are the people that he would say that to, and I think he really looks up to both of them, and I think that's why that went down the way that did. Um, yeah.
And with Jacob and Melissa as roommates, it's kind of fun to watch how that seeps into their day-to-day life at the school. And, Melissa's very closed off. She doesn't want to kind of have any element of like, yes, we're actually friends at home. But you also get the impression that she lets her guard down a little bit more. It's like, they're watching their Real Housewives together at night, but she would never want people to know that they're doing that. And I was interested in kind of what you envision their home life together looking like as roommates when the cameras aren't necessarily there or we're not there in scenes.
Oh yes, I've spent a lot of time imagining what it's like. I think it's exactly that. I think it's a very hot and cold thing. I think I have, burrowed my way into her heart, but I think I drive her absolutely mad. Um yeah, I'm so glad again that somebody had that idea, and I feel like there's so much more that we can do with them being roommates. So I hope that that gets to stick around for the next season at least.
Yeah. It was also really beautiful to watch how enthusiastic and how excited he was to show up in class when Barbara started teaching the music class. You know, he's sitting there right front and center. And if you found that there's a lot in what's created in Jacob about, yes, he likes to think that he's a really good teacher and he's imparting a lot of wisdom on his kids, but also he's someone who really has an earnestness to continue growing and to continue learning more, and especially from teachers like that around him at Abbott.
Totally. I think it's always been a tenet of this character that he thinks he can do no less than change the world. Like he is a social puppy dog. Um I think the like I said, the stakes and the obstacles of this character are so built into who he is, you know, his nature and who he, you know, who he wants to please and why he wants to please them. Um and there is a gorgeous naivete about who he is, and uh that's all just really fun to play. Um and it was so fun in that episode in particular because um you know, we all sort of like take turns uh being a part of like the main story of that episode, and certainly, you know, it never feels like you're not a part of the main story of that episode, but specifically for that, it happened over the episode happens over a longer period of time, and that's always just fun because it feels like we have more colors to paint with. We get to kind of like draw a steeper arc, um and 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 again, like it was something that I felt like we hadn't touched on in quite a long time, like Jacob's reverence for Barbara, and um and I think we saw that change a little bit. You know, he kind of got to impart some wisdom onto her, which is not the usual dynamic. So that was fun.
There's also that great moment when the teachers are all on the field trip and the kids have gotten together and written a play, but they have the teachers all performing as each other, and Jacob gets to play as Barbara. But it felt like that was very much showing us a lot about the teachers' relationships with each others, but also for all of you as actors and the relationship that you have to be able to play and perform these versions of each other as well. And so I just wanted to ask about filming that part of the episode.
Yeah, it was quite emotional, honestly. We were in Philly, you know, we were shooting the finale. We had shot the episode as we often do in less time than we need, or usually. I mean, I won't say we need because I'm just so blown away by the people who make our show and how they make something out of nothing, and and we will, you know, on occasion write these really ambitious episodes, and I think we did the finale in 4 days, and we were in Philly. We were in this place that we had been talking about, dreaming about for 4 years. And they had gone to Philly to shoot before, but I was not a part of that story. And so it was the last day of filming. I always thought that was such a clever idea. And when Quinta told me about it, I was like, please don't let me get Barbara. Please don't let me get Barbara. Please don't let me get Barbara. And of course, I probably said it out loud. And so yeah, it was an intense moment. We were staring at, you know, 400 uh students, and they were all holding on to these streamers, like getting ready to throw them our way. And it was the last day of shooting of the fourth season of this thing that, you know, since it started has really felt like um uh a rocket. And so I'll remember it for a very long time. It was terrifying, and yeah, a lot of fun.
It's such a wonderful moment, and I loved everything that you've built into Jacob so far, and this was such a great season. So congratulations on all of that. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks, Mara.